Hello everybody and welcome back. My name is Ryan with Alder Ranch Homestead, and this is the second video in our basic wallet series. In the first video I showed you how to make your pattern. It's really quick and easy, takes about 13 minutes, and you can watch the video straight through. It's me doing the pattern live, so if you follow along with that, you'll get a free pattern. If you don't want to go through all that, there's a link in the description. You can get the pattern from me, but I do recommend you go back and check out that first video. It's a lot of fun. Today, we're gonna dye our leather, we're gonna cut our leather, we're gonna burnish the backside so everything's nice and smooth and polished looking. But before we get into that, we have to figure out what leather we're gonna use. For the weight of the leather, I recommend a 3 to 4 ounce or a 5 to 6 ounce leather. That's thick enough that it's not gonna give you trouble with buckling when you're burnishing edges or sewing, but it's not so thick that it's difficult for a beginner to cut, and it also won't be a, phone book sized wallet just for a card wallet that you got to stuff in your pocket. So you kind of get the best of both worlds, and it's a sweet spot right there. But then the question is, what kind of leather do you want to use? Do you want to use something like this Crazy Horse chrome tanned leather, or do you want to use something like this vegetable tan side? And the choice is really yours. If you go with the chrome tan leather, as you can see, it's already dyed. I don't know if I've ever seen a chrome tan leather that wasn't dyed, and it's already got a top coat on it. So you can skip all of those. The downside is that you can't burnish the edges, and if you wanted to tool a pattern like on the back of the wallet, it doesn't really take stamps that well. So pros and cons there. The other thing is, a side like this is pretty inexpensive. Chrome tan can get wildly expensive. If you're looking at like designer bag or garment chrome tan leather, it can get really expensive, but the process itself is a little quicker and a little cheaper to do. So the bottom of the market is definitely cheaper than chrome tan. Chrome tan, this is pretty inexpensive too. This is just imported chrome tan or vegetable tanned leather. And the benefit there is, A, you can slick the edges with a burnisher like I'm gonna show you how to do. And you can dye it whatever color you want, and you can also add whatever top coat you want. So those are the pros and cons. Take your pick. And there we are. So let's get into it. I'm actually going to dye this before I cut it out. This gives us a lot of benefits, namely being that if you want to do two-tone, aka leave the flesh side a different color, it allows you to do that without worrying about the dye seeping over the edges. Let's talk about not making a mess. So as you can see, I've got gloves on because it turns out that this Fiebing's Pro Dye dyes a lot of stuff really well. It dyes wood well, it dyes leather well, and it dyes your hands well. So, as fun as that would be to go to my kids' soccer practice with funky colored hands, I'm going to try to skip that as much as possible. The other thing is I've got this on top of a piece of paper towel to soak up most of the dye so it's not running everywhere. And then I've got it on top of a piece of tin foil because once this gets saturated, anything that's under it is going to get dye on it. So by putting it on this aluminum foil, it stops that from seeping through and getting all over my cutting mat. As I said a minute ago, I'm using this Fiebing's Pro Dye. It is really awesome stuff, and if you're going to be dyeing leather, I highly recommend it. Oh, and on the note of products, I'm not affiliated with any of these companies, but there are going to be affiliate links, Amazon affiliate links in the description of this video. If you use those links, I get maybe a small commission. So if you want to support the channel, it doesn't cost you anything else. So you've got a couple options for how you can apply it. You can use a wool dauber. That would work really good. If you have a big tray or something that you want to fill up with dye, you can actually dip this whole piece in there in one go. That works really good, but it takes a little bit longer to dry, and of course you need a big vat of dye, and you gotta worry about transferring it back and forth or storing your big vat of dye, so I tend not to do that. Or you can use a foam brush. So I'm hoping that, I haven't used this too many times, but I'm hoping this will actually speed things up and make the dye job a little less crazy. So while we're dyeing this, you want to try to make as few passes as possible. It's not super critical, so don't sweat it too much, but you want to be working along the wet edge. So just like if you're using a marker or something, when you put this down, the edge of it is going to stay wet, and as we work down, this is going to start to dry. So you want to work along this wet edge as much as possible, because those are going to flow in. That's going to allow the dye to flow into itself and kind of blend it out. It's like if you've ever used alcohol, colored artist alcohol markers. It's the exact same process principle for both of them. The other thing is, if you're going to add dye, add it to where it's wet. Like even more than just working on the wet edge. Let's start dyeing this leather. So there we go. And as you can see, I'm just working along this bottom edge methodically. I've gotten a decent bit of dye in my brush, but it's not super crazy. Right, that's one side. Man, and I said that it was going to be easier, and look how striped that is. So we'll see how that looks when it actually dries. And we are just going to do a monochrome wallet. So we're just going to dye the back of this the exact same color. The dye does stiffen the leather a little bit, so you'll hear some people say that you should only dye one side of it. It doesn't seem to make that much of a difference to me. I just dye it anyways. It's not a big deal. So now that we've got that dyed, all we got to do is let this dry. You know what? It's only been like 2 minutes, but those stripes are bugging me, and I think I'm actually going to take another pass going on a bias. Oh yeah, that's looking a lot better. That's looking really good now. Okay, all right. Now I'm feeling less nervous. Man, when I started this, I thought I knew what I was talking about. All right. I mentioned I don't usually use foam brushes, right? If you use a dauber, I usually do sort of a swirling motion. Another alternative you can do is, because essentially there is probably plenty of dye on here. For black, I don't mind it getting even more black, but if you're doing something like a brown or like the walnut I mentioned, you can actually try to blend the dye out. So I've used water. If you're careful, you can use alcohol. I want to say I used like Everclear or something like that when I've done that in the past. But another thing that I've tried is using neat's foot oil. And it's like when Bob Ross would prep his canvas with white. It's already wet, so when you put the dye on it, it's immediately going to spread into it. The caveat with this is if you go too heavy, for starters, I would only do it on one side and I would go really light. If you go too heavy, you can have a problem where you can't actually get your top coat to stick. So, all right, now I'm actually going to let this dry and I will be back in, let's say 30 or 40 minutes. Now we've got our leather dyed. It's nice and, well, even enough. And got a couple options. So one thing we could do if we wanted to even out this leather even more is we could add a little bit of neat's foot oil. Let that soak in. Takes a little bit of time, but you know what? I think that's looking pretty good. So the next thing we're going to do is smooth out the flesh side with some Tokonole. And this is totally an optional step, but it makes the backside a little bit smoother, so it feels a little bit fancier, I guess. But it also makes it a little less grippy, which I really like in a wallet, because that means it's a little bit easier to get your cards out of. Card slots are going to be decently firm, so making this a little bit more slippery so you can get your cards out easier is definitely a great thing to do in my book. So we're going to do it. So we're just going to take a little bit of this Tokonole, and we're just going to apply it with a brush. And this is just a cheap brush. I think I got it from like Hobby Lobby for, I think it was just a couple bucks, but any nice decent sized brush would be good. To definitely get the excess, I'm just going to take a putty knife and scrape that extra. Good enough for now. And we're just going to let this dry for a little bit. All right, so to burnish this, what we got to do is run a burnisher over it real quick. Looks good to me. And I don't know how well you can pick that up in the camera, but that is almost as smooth as the green side. Not quite, of course, but surprisingly smooth, and it does make a big difference. Totally optional. Also, that's something you can do on Chrome Tan as well. That's not something like the dye and edge slicking and stuff like that that you're limited to veg tan. Now, let's make sure we're on the flush side, and we are going to mark out our pattern. All right, I've just got a silver pen. We're going to carefully mark this out. And when we mark the back out, we only want to mark it on 3 sides so that we can cut it to length. Now, in reality, this is on the back side. Even if we had a line, it's not like we're going to be, you know, an inch off. Or if you decide to mark it on the flush side, you're not going to end up with a big line on the end of your wallet. All right. Also, another tip for your pattern, if you get the digital one from me, you can just print that out. And if you print it out, what works really great is cardstock, because it gives you a little bit more of a lip to butt your pen or your scratch awl or whatever you're using to mark that out. And if you want to go a step farther, what you can do is you can glue it to something else. You could use multiple layers of cardstock, or what works really great is boxes from cereal or crackers or anything like that. Those work really great, and it's a great way to recycle. Let's line this up and get this cut. And use our step-up block so we can get this perfectly square. So again, I don't know how well this picks up in the camera, but turns out that when I cut that, it wasn't quite perfectly square, but this actually is. Well, as much as the tolerance is for the ruler. That looks good. Perfect. Pocket 1 done. And that just moved a little bit, didn't it? That is not just about perfect. Oh, what is going on here? That's 2 for 2. All right. Now, we've got 2 pockets that are just about identical. All right. All right, there we are there. And let's visualize this one more time with our cards. Hey, that's looking really good. All right. So there we are. All right, now we've got our wallet all cut out. We'll come back next week so I can show you how to glue it up all together, get it cut to length, all that good stuff right there. If you have any questions about this process, let me know in the comments. I'm happy to answer whatever questions you might have. And if you like these kind of videos and want to see more, subscribe, like, comment, all that kind of good stuff. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one.